As I settled into my seat on the flight home, I observed the plane ascending into the sky through the window. I was finally making my way back home after 30 years away. For Lisa and myself, I felt compelled to take this action. That's me, by the way, Alan Roberts, Gunnery Sergeant Alan Roberts, or Machine Gun Rob to those I've chosen to let get close to me over the years. I pulled out the Zippo lighter I had carried with me all these years, a gift from my wife that read, "To my beloved husband, Alan, congratulations Marine." This nickname will have a new one added to it after today, retired. I had worn a military uniform for more than 30 years, now embellished with badges and ribbons that held no personal significance to anybody but me. I was in the reserves for just over 10 of those years. I could genuinely claim to have been there, done that, and acquired every shirt. When Lisa and I got married all those years ago, I was already in good shape. It was after work one day that I actually met her on the side of the road. I saw her car on the side of the road on my way home from my job as a mechanic at a big car dealership in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I could see steam coming from her engine because her hood was up. I stopped and offered to help, as is common when one sees someone in need. The fact that she was attractive didn't hurt either. After taking a quick glance, I saw what was wrong. Her fan belt was ripped. The solution was simple. I hurried to a nearby auto parts store and returned with a belt and coolant to replace the one she had misplaced. In no time at all, I got her car running. She said, "Thank you so much. I need to get back to Spokane, and I thought I'd never make it. Is there anything I can do to thank you?" I said, "Just make it home safely." She pleaded, "No, please let me pay you back. How about I buy you dinner? Do you like Red Lobster?" What the hell, my thoughts were. I love Red Lobster. She grinned and jotted down her phone number and name on a piece of paper, I said. "All right, what about Friday at 7 p.m., she asked. I thought it sounded good. We had dated for 8 months before I proposed, and in 1987 we were married. I've been a happy man ever since. She moved to my house in northern Idaho, though it increased her commute by more than 30 miles, and she worked as an elementary school teacher in the Spokane Valley, which is just across the state line. We discussed buying something closer to her job, but I liked my house, especially since it was empty and located on 5 acres of woodland off of Interstate 95 north of Coeur d'Alene. My parents had built it many years prior, and they had bequeathed it to me in their will, along with a nice inheritance. I hoped to eventually pass the house on to one of my children. Lisa knew that because I was in the reserves, I had to go away for a weekend a month and 2 weeks each year for training. She never complained, and the checks, however small, were usually deposited in my IRA. Our first child, Renee, was born about a year and a half after we were married in 1990. A brutal dictator named Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and my unit was called to active duty. We returned a little over a year later to a warm welcome, and a year after that, our son, Carl, was born. Then September 11th happened, and all of our lives changed. I was given the opportunity to go into active duty, and I accepted. From that point on, we moved back and forth between Camp Pendleton, California, and Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Lisa was certified to teach in both states, so she had a job wherever we went. I ended up spending 3 tours of duty in Iraq and 3 more in Afghanistan, a total of just over 6 years. I was also sent to Okinawa 4 times for a year each time. Lisa and the kids came back to our home in Idaho, and she ended up working at the same school in the Spokane Valley. She never complained, God bless her soul, but I knew it was weighing on her and the kids, and I felt bad. 10 missed anniversaries, 10 missed birthdays, and Christmases are not good for any family. When it came to this tour, I promised her it would be her last. Now, in my 56 years, I felt that running around in the hot desert dodging bullets was a game for younger men. I had done my duty, and it was time to go home. You may argue that, having served 30 years or more, I ought to have retired at a much higher rank, and you would have some point. I was pretty much your average Marine. I didn't go after wild women. But I did enjoy having a few drinks with my buddies, and I got into a lot of trouble when I stood up for my buddies with my physical prowess and my willingness to engage in hand-to-hand combat. I lost 2 promotions as a result, but I never complained or whined. Heck, I loved my job as a gunnery sergeant. Everyone went to me for advice or tactics, and I was respected for it. That alone meant more to me than all the ribbons and medals I wore on my chest. I was reminded of the retirement party the guys had thrown, and we had a great time exchanging sea stories and salty anecdotes. Our battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Ron, came by to wish me well. We had been friends for a long time, having been among the officers who had tied me up years prior. He shook my hand and gave me a commendation for my service. Grinning, he said, "The Corps won't be the same without you, Gunny." "Thank you for saying that, Colonel," I grinned in return. "I think he's in good hands," I said, but then one of the soldiers, Lance Corporal Dawson, a big black guy from Georgia, came over with his buddies and handed me something wrapped in brown paper. "Just something to remember us by, Gunny Robb," he smiled, and as I pulled off the paper, I smiled to see what was inside, a wooden hand that was carved with an extended middle finger, a reference to all the times I had joked about putting my hand on someone's arm, something I did a lot and would never have taken offense. "Did you do that yourself, Dawson?" I turned the carved figure over and saw that he had carved our unit's designation and the Marine Corps emblem on the back of his hand. He grinned and nodded in response to my question. "Sure did, Gunny," he said, beaming with pride. "What a great job," I exclaimed, vowing to always cherish it. "You take damn good care of these Marines, Joel," I said to Staff Sergeant Joel Henson, the young guy who had taken over for me as the company machine gunner, as we shook hands and the other Marines around us cheered and clapped. "I assure you, Gunny, I will," he grinned in response. I laughed and said, "Good, because if you don't, I'll come back and kick your ass," which prompted more yelling and applause. "Henson is a decent man," stated Gunny Robb. "Obviously, Captain Michaels, our company commander, no one can take your place. Gunny, look after yourself. It's been a pleasure working with you." After exchanging goodbyes and shaking hands, the driver approached to inform me that all of my luggage had been loaded and was prepared to be transported to the airport. As the plane started to descend, I felt my awareness return to the present, and I saw the city of Spokane, Washington, clearly, with the river and waterfall in sight, as well as Riverfront Park and the famous Expo 74 Pavilion, a place I'd taken Lisa and the kids to enjoy many a summer afternoon. The plane touched down soon after, and we all disembarked. I grabbed my sea bag and clothes bag and made my way out, hoping to see Lisa. I texted her the flight information and an email so she would know when to come get me. Normally, she would arrive a few hours ahead of time in case I arrived early. When she didn't show up, I thought that was strange and texted her again. At the airport, "Where are you?" When I called her cell phone, I got no answer, and the message went straight to voicemail. I called her parents, but they said they hadn't heard from her either. Worried, I called home, but got an answering machine. "God," I prayed quietly, "please let her be safe." "Do you want us to come get you?" her mother inquired. "Not yet," I replied. "Perhaps she's caught in traffic. In the event that I don't find another hitchhiker, I'll wait and give you a call. You are wasting your time driving this far. But do ask her to give me a call if you hear from her." She said, "I will, Alan," and hung up. A man's voice interrupted my thoughts, asking if Gunny needed a ride. I turned to see a tall, well-built man dressed in khaki packing a suitcase into a white SUV. The man asked, "Well, where are you heading?" "I thought my wife was already here," I said. "To Idaho, between AOL and Bayview off Highway 95, I advised him. He replied, "No issue. I'm heading over there. I would be glad to drive you." Sure beats hailing a cab, I thought to myself, what the hell? "Thanks," I replied. "I'm grateful. At the very least, let me cover your gas costs." "No, don't worry about it," he shook his head, adding, "the company credit card will take care of that. Feel free to fill up." I threw my clothes in a duffel bag and my sea bag into the Jeep and got in. "On vacation at home?" As he got into the car, he asked. Home for good, I answered. I'll take a 30-day terminal vacation before I formally retire. That's a long time, 30 years, he remarked. My name is John Sykes, by the way, he said, holding out his hand. Alan Roberts, I shook his hand and said. From where do you originate? He inquired. The unit has returned from its tour in Afghanistan. I told him, flew in from Camp Lejeune. You've had a busy day, then, he remarked. You can repeat that again, I replied. Taking out my phone, I texted Lisa once more, saying, I got a ride, no worries. TC is at home. So, what do you have planned? As soon as we entered the driveway, he questioned. Not much, I responded. Fishing, hunting, chasing the wife around, you know. Yeah, I know, he replied. I served in the Army for 25 years, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. I promise you that retirement isn't as exciting as it seems. Now what do you do? I inquired. I run a camp for men in northern Idaho, he replied. Are you serious? I've lived in Idaho my entire life, but I've never heard of a camp for men, I inquired. When did it first come into being? He stated, it's been around for about 10 years. I'll be very surprised if you've heard of it. No offense intended. We intentionally placed it in Idaho so that it wouldn't be seen. Which type of camp is this? I inquired. It's a camp designed to help men deal with certain personal situations, he explained. Oh? What kinds of situations? I inquired. He said, well, let me put it this way, you've clearly witnessed combat. Has any soldier or Marine ever gotten a letter from home addressed to Dear John? Never once, I replied. Then you know what the news that his wife is cheating on him does to a man, he continued. Too well, I replied. The only difference is that, unlike you and me, the majority of them have never received military training. We help men deal with problems like that, he remarked. In fact, many of the men that visit my camp are terrified of their own shadows. Oh my God, I exclaimed. How then do you assist them? I inquired. We strengthen them physically, he stated. Then we work on their mental and emotional state and provide all the legal services we can so they can deal with whatever they're facing. I said, that sounds like a lot. How much time do they spend in your camp? The regular course lasts 3 months, he stated. It's very intensive, about the same as recruit training. I said, that sounds like it. Have you ever worked as a drill instructor before? He inquired. Yes, replied I. I served successfully at Parris Island, South Carolina. I've actually been given the green light to bring in a new senior instructor to oversee the curriculum, welcome new students, and supervise the other instructors, the man said, looking impressed. I enlisted there as a sergeant and was promoted to the rank of staff sergeant at the end of my service, so you know the methods we use, the man said. Does that sound intriguing to you? I have to admit, it does, I replied. Somehow I feel like we met for a reason. Alan, you're very observant. I won't lie to you, you are too good a man for that, he said. The business has been watching you for a while. On me? Perplexed, I asked. Let me start by saying that you're a resident of the area and a combat veteran with no noteworthy background other than a few bar fights, he smiled. You have 4 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Award, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Achievement Medal, Navy Meritorious Service Medal, and Navy Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal. You are the perfect addition to our program, in spite of the bar fights. You are just what our students need, Gunny, no matter what. And you're claiming that your organization is watching me? I inquired, feeling anxious. Yes, he answered. We were just waiting on your retirement application. There is no one better fit for this position than you. You will only report to me, and the salary and benefits are far better than those of the Corps. He nodded in agreement. Sounds interesting, I said, but there's one but in your application. And you'd be right, he said, passing me a manila envelope that was resting on the seat next to him. There's just one issue you have to deal with first. Please proceed and have a look. My heart clenched as I read the report, which was a neatly typed account of the activities of my wife, Lisa Roberts, and a man named Elroy McEnroe, the principal of the school where she works. Apparently, Lisa had been having sex with this man for over 20 years, often meeting while I was away from home. I was horrified to see what was stored on the DVD in the envelope. How did you obtain this? I inquired. I won't belittle your intelligence, Alan, he said. I expressed interest in the position, and the company chose to conduct a background check on you. For obvious reasons, your family life was screened as part of that process. I assume you were unaware of that happening. I shook my head, taken aback by what I saw when he asked. No, I was unaware, I admitted. How are you aware that this has been happening for 25 years? I inquired. He declared, we used excellent investigators who have the newest surveillance gear. They locate anything that is able to be located. They discovered that through discussions between Mr. McEnroe and your wife. It is evident that your spouse has made every effort to conceal it from you over the years. That clarified her entire stay there during my absence, I remarked. It also implied that she had spent half of the previous 20 years with Elroy. Oh no. Then I had a terrible thought. What about the kids? May I ask? I said. That's the only good news in all this, he stated. Both yours. I questioned, how do you know that? Like I said, our investigators are the best, he replied. They took DNA samples from both of your children and compared them to the DNA in the military file on you. It all matched. I have a feeling you knew she wasn't coming to meet me at the airport, I replied. He gave a head nod. You're right, he replied. According to the investigators, they meet often after school. But one day a week, she takes him to your house where they do a case. Then she drives him back where he picks up his car and drives home. They have kept this routine since you have been gone, and tonight, they usually drive to your place. That's a 70-mile round trip just for a piece of ass. How could she do that? I responded. John gave a shrug. You know, it happens, he remarked. Long business trips, time away from home and family. You come back from war changed in ways you don't even realize. That can put a strain on the best marriage. The question is, what are you going to do about it? If all this is true, I have no choice but to divorce her, I replied. John gave a nod of approval. Yes, I agree, he replied. What about him? Very good query, I replied. I'd like to skin him alive, but I don't want to go to jail. I'll figure something out. All the information you need is in the report, JN said. He's married. He and his wife have 2 kids, who, by the way, don't know about his affair with Lisa. Do you swear that this information is correct? I responded. He gave a head nod. Yes, he responded. If I had any doubt at all, I wouldn't have shown it to you. I'm really sorry, Gunny. You're a good man, and you don't deserve this. I said, who does deserve it? We arrived at my driveway and turned in a few minutes later. You're really out in the middle of nowhere, he said as he drove down the driveway and pulled up in front of my house. Nice place you have here, John continued. Well, he said. We reached the turnoff to my house, and JN turned onto a narrow paved road. Thank you, I answered. My parents built this place with their bare hands. I was hoping Lisa and I could live here in retirement. I guess it's just me here, for now. John turned to face me. I think this will help you make up your mind. Feel free to wear your uniform if you want. I'm serious about this job, but you need to take care of this one. He pointed to a manila envelope. Listen, Alan, he said, holding out a business card to me. Call me when you can and come to camp. We can talk about it if you want. We even have counselors to help you through it if you feel the need. Thanks, John, for the trip, the offer, and everything. I'll take care of it, I nodded in understanding. We shook hands, and I exited the SUV, grabbing my car bag and bag of clothes. I promise you, I'll be in touch. I made my way to the front door as he turned around and drove away. Disappointed by John's words, I moved my belongings into the bedroom and organized everything. Everything was as tidy as a pin, just the way Lise always liked it, I noticed. I reasoned that even though she's cheating, at least her house is tidy. I finished organizing everything and put on my uniform, which consisted of jeans and a t-shirt. After grabbing my folder, I headed downstairs. I had to see what else that report contained. I took the DVD out and inserted it into the player. I put the DVD on and turned on the TV. It looked like a motel when I saw Lisa and Elroy. He said, "So when are you going to dump him?" She answered, "I don't know, probably not until he retires." "If you play your cards right, you could get half of his retirement checks and most of his savings and 401k, Elroy stated. That was her strategy. Good thing I have the prenup she signed when we first got married. Dad had the form ready for me when he died, all I had to do was put her name on it. His biggest concern was the house and the inheritance they left me. I had heard enough and pulled out the phone book. It wasn't too late, so I called and made an appointment with a family law attorney for the next morning. Going upstairs, I gathered some of her things and set the bags by the door. Screw her, I thought. If she wants to leave, I'll let her go. Afterward, I spent some time on the couch reflecting on my life with Lisa. As far as I knew, things were fine between us. Sure, we had the same problems that every married couple has, but we always worked them out. I always thought that if she was going to cheat on me, it would only be with someone much bigger than myself, but I couldn't imagine that she would settle for a marshmallow man. I even laughed out loud when I thought about it. However, in all the years we'd been together, I'd never once guessed that our lovemaking was causing her physical pain. She had never told me about it. What surprised and impressed me was that she was always trim, even after our children were born. I made my way to my office and opened the cabinet where I kept my indoor tools. There on a shelf was an unopened package of duct tape. There were 2 rolls in the package, and while I was looking at them, an idea popped into my head. I took the duct tape and the package of zip ties and closed the cabinet. I walked over to the gun cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a .45 caliber pistol. After making sure it was empty, I went back to the dining room. I spread everything out on the table, made a sandwich, grabbed a beer, and sat at the table waiting for them to arrive. It was starting to get dark when I heard a car pull into the garage. A couple of minutes later, I heard the 2 of them giggling and talking as Lisa opened the door. Neither of them saw me sitting at the table until they entered the main part of the house. "Alan," she exclaimed. "When did you get here? Didn't you get my emails and messages?" I asked. "Sorry, my phone battery died," she said. "Things aren't what they seem, Alan." "Trust me, really?" I asked. "You mean it's not you and Elroy getting ready to have fun in our bed?" Alan motioned toward me, and I raised my gun. He stopped in place, his eyes widening, and his face even wider than it was. There were no bullets in the gun. Hell, the magazine didn't even fit in the pistol grip, but they didn't know that. "Oh God," he screamed. "Please don't do this." I noticed a wet spot in the crotch of his pants and smiled. The bastard had wet himself. "Shut up," I said. "You think you can entertain another man's wife for over 20 years and get away with it?" "I don't think so." "Stand against the tree," I told him. "Put your back against it, hands behind your back." I looked at Lisa. "Tie him to the tree," I ordered. "All I want to see are his eyes and nose move." She took the first roll and began gently applying it to his skin. "Hurry the hell up," I said. She started running around the tree, dispensing tape as she went. When the first roll was used up, I tossed her the second and ordered her to keep going. By the time she was done, Elroy was attached to the tree in a cocoon of duct tape. Only his eyes and nose were visible. He was looking back and forth fearfully. I walked over to him and made sure he couldn't move. Then I looked into his eyes, smiled, and pulled out my cell phone. I dialed his home number, which I had thanks to the report J.N. had given me. "Ma Anro residence," Judy said, a female voice on the other end. "Mrs. McEnroe, my name is Alan Roberts," I said. "Is your husband, Elroy, here?" "No, he has a meeting with the teachers at his school," she replied. "May I take a message and ask him to call you back?" "That won't be necessary, Mrs. McEnroe, but thank you anyway," I said. "I apologize for the deception, but the truth is that your husband is at my house with my wife, and I think you should come and get him." I saw Elroy's eyes grow even wider under the tape. "What is he doing in your house with your wife?" asked Judy. "Well, they were going to have sex, but they had a change of plans," I said. "What?" yelled Judy. "Are you sure about that? Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No, ma'am," I said. "It's not a joke. They've been having an affair for over 20 years. That bastard," she shouted. "I'm going to kick that bastard's ass. God damn it, I'll come and get him." "Where are you located?" "Idaho, east of AOL on Highway 95, I said. "I'll send you directions." "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," she said. "I'll be there as soon as I can." After we finished talking, I texted her directions to my house. Then I looked at Elroy, who was even more scared than before. "I'm going to have a little talk with my wife right now, if you don't mind." I told him, "Don't go anywhere, do you hear me?" He tried to shake his head, but the tape wouldn't let him. I gestured for Lisa to go inside. She stepped aside, and I followed her. When we got into the house, I motioned for her to sit on the couch and held the remote for the TV and DVD player. "How long does this last?" I asked. "And before you say anything, remember that I know a lot more than you think." "It's been going on for a while," she said quietly. "For a while?" I asked. "What, a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years?" "Longer," she said, lowering her face. "Longer?" I repeated. "I see. When did it start?" "Around 1995, she said. "We worked together for years and never did anything while you were home. We only got together when you were gone, including all those times I was sent overseas," I asked. She nodded her head yes. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. You weren't supposed to find out about it. So, while I was fighting terrorists and getting shot in the ass, you were here having fun with this piece of crap in our bed?" I asked. She started crying. "Stop pouring water," I told her. "Answer the damn question." She wiped her eyes and nodded her head. "Yes," she said. "Please, we can get past this. Can't you give me another chance? Can we get through this? Are you kidding me? You think I should just turn a blind eye to your cheating? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't just kick your ass to the curb right now," I said. "It shouldn't concern us," she said, "and I don't want a divorce." I knew she was lying since I'd heard what she'd said to Elroy. "It's too late for that," I said. "I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow." She looked at me defiantly. "You don't want to do that," she said. "Elroy said if you try to divorce me, I can get half your pension, the house, and everything else." I laughed and held out the prenup. "There's just one problem," I said. "Remember the prenup you signed all those years ago? Guess what? It's still valid, and it's ironclad. You don't get a damn thing if I can help it. The house is all mine. Remember, my parents willed it to me, and the prenup clearly states what happens in the event of infidelity. Don't worry, I'll follow it to the letter. You'll get 40% of our joint savings, but no support, and I get to keep all of my retirement contributions." "I'll argue with you," she said. "I figured you'd say something like that," I said, pointing the remote at the TV. I pressed play, and a video of her having fun with Elroy popped up on the screen. Her face went white, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God," she gasped. "How did you get this?" Please, turn it off. It doesn't matter how I got it, I said. What matters is what your school board will do when they get a copy of this. She looked at me shocked. I'm going to lose my job, she said, and so will Elroy. Please, no, don't do this. So, you'll sign the papers when you get them? I asked, defeated. She nodded her head. I turned up the volume on the video and fast-forwarded to the part where she complained that I was too big for her. Can you explain that to me? I asked. All these years we've been together, and you've never complained once. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't want to hurt your feelings, she said. I've always been a little down. I liked it at first, and you always turned me on. But after a while, it started to hurt. And that's why you started making excuses not to have sex with me? I asked. She nodded her head. Yes, she said. I'm really sorry. Yeah, that's what you said, I told her. I grabbed her purse and pulled out her keys. I pulled out her house keys, then pulled out her wallet. I took out her ATM and general credit card. I saw her STCU card and left it in her wallet. I knew she had an account at the Spokane Teachers Credit Union, and I knew she regularly contributed 10% of her paycheck to that account. I figured if she needed money, she could use that account. I tossed her purse back on the couch. I guess I should probably pack up and leave, she said quietly. Not now, I told her. You still have some explaining to do. You need to tell your parents and our children about what you did so they know why we're divorcing. Please don't make me do this, she begged, crying. Why? I asked. You've had no problem cheating on me for 2 decades. Surely you're not ashamed of what you did. They'll hate me. I know it, she cried. That's too bad, I said, picking up the phone. I was about to call her parents, but I saw the glow of headlights pulling out into the driveway. I figured it was Judy coming to get her husband. I see Judy is here, I said. You can start by explaining to her why you entertained her husband. A moment later, there was a knock on the door. Opening it, I saw a rather well-fed woman who looked a little younger than me. She looked quite attractive and was wearing her ripped jeans perfectly tight. I couldn't help but notice that she was looking at me even more than I was looking at her. Yes? I asked. Are you Alan Roberts? She asked, slanting her eyes to my crotch. Yes, and you must be Judy McEnroe, I said. For the moment, she said. Please come in, I said as I opened the door. So, where is that nasty piece of hiding? She asked. I smiled when she said that. I liked this woman immediately. He's a little tied up right now, I said. He's not going anywhere, I assure you. Judy looked at Lisa, and her face reddened with rage. So, it's you having fun with my soon-to-be ex-husband, she said. Her eyes went wide as she recognized my wife. Oh my God, it's you, Lisa Conroy. I should have known. Please stop, Lisa shouted. Shut up, you goddamn. Judy wailed. I have to kick your ass by the middle of next week. How can you do that? You're married to this gorgeous piece of man meat, and you're cheating on him with a Pillsbury Doughboy. Judy stopped to look at me. Where is that nasty bastard? She asked. I'll take you to him. I said, wait. I went to my office and opened the cabinet that held the duct tape. Quickly, I found what I was looking for, a box-cutting knife, a bottle of 90% isopropyl alcohol, and a fairly clean rag that used to be a t-shirt. I went back to the front room and invited Judy to follow me. We went outside, and I pointed to the tree where I had secured Elroy. Judy burst into laughter when she saw that he was wrapped in duct tape. Elroy wasn't too happy to see his wife, and I could see the terror in his eyes. I like your style, Alan, she said. It's going to take forever to rid him of all this. I shook my head and set the spork and rag on the ground. No, it won't take, I said. She held up her hand. Wait a second, she said. She walked over to him and looked him in the eye. For a second, you're a damn. she said, taking off the rings and threw them on the ground. You haven't touched me in months, and now I know why. I decided this was the woman I didn't want to piss off. I pulled out a box cutter and cut the band. Then I stepped back and looked at Lisa. Once free of the tape, Elroy fell to the ground, squirming in agony. Okay, get up, I told him. Get your ass in the house. He's been more fun to be with than I've had in years, Judy said, watching Elroy run into the house. Please, haven't you done enough? She pleaded. No, I said. Call your mom and put her on speakerphone. Lisa called her parents. Hi, Mom, she said when she was answered. Mom, Lisa cried, it's me, Lisa. Lisa, her mother said. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Mom, Alan is kicking me out of the house, Lisa said, crying. Why is he doing that? Her mother asked. He found out I cheated on him, Lisa said through sobs. You did what? Her mother asked, clearly angry. You stupid, how could you do that to your husband? I thought I raised you better than that. What the hell is wrong with you? I don't blame him for kicking you out. Mom, please, can I stay with you for a while? Asked Lisa. I think so, but not for too long, said her mother. And no men, do you understand me? Thank you, Mom, she said. Is Alan there? Her mother asked. I'm here, Mom, I said. I liked Lisa's parents, and I called them Mom and Dad since we'd gotten married. Are you okay, son? She asked. I'll be fine, Mom, I said. It won't be easy, but I'll get through it. I'm so sorry, Alan, Lisa's mother said. You were always so good to her. I don't know what went into her brain. Please stay in touch. I will, Mom. Thank you, I said before she ended the conversation. I looked at Lisa before continuing. You have 2 more calls to make, so get on it. Please, don't make me do it, she sobbed. Why not? I asked. They deserve to hear the truth. Get to it. Trembling, Lisa picked up the phone and called our son, Carl. Hi, he said, picking up the phone. Hi, hey Carl, Lisa said. It's Mom. Are you okay? No, he asked. No, she replied. Your father and I are getting a divorce. What? He asked. It can't be. What happened? Did Daddy cheat on you or something? No, son, I said before you ask, I'm fine. I just felt you needed to hear the truth. Your mother has been doing this for over 20 years. I only found out about it today. Oh, my God, Dad, he said. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm sorry, Carl, she said. Yeah, sorry you got caught, he said. Look, Mom, I can't believe you did that to Dad. I've got to go. I'll talk to you later. Bye, he ended the conversation, and Lisa sobbed as she sat on the couch. One more call, I said. Lisa looked up, her eyes red and puffy. Please, I'm begging you, no more. One call, I said. Make it. Trembling, Lisa dialed our daughter's number. The call went pretty much the same as the others, only Renee was far more upset than Carl. You stupid, she said when Lisa told her what was going on. I hope Daddy kicks your slimy ass to the curb. He is, Lisa said. How can you be so stupid? Asked Renee. You're not my mother right now. I don't know who you are. You better get yourself straightened out or you'll never see your grandchildren. Don't call me ever again. Goodbye, Lisa sobbed uncontrollably as Renee wrapped up the conversation. Are you beginning to realize the consequences of your actions? I asked. You completely destroyed 2 families with your selfishness. I hope you're happy. Lisa wiped her eyes as I spoke to her. I told you I was sorry, she said. Everyone hates me now. Well, what you sow is what you reap, I said. I think it's time for you to leave. I've already packed your toiletries and some of your things. You can make arrangements to come back later for the rest of your stuff. Nodding her head, Lisa went upstairs, picked up the suitcase and overnight bag I had placed by the bedroom door, and went back downstairs. Judy stopped her before she went out the door. "Wait a second," Judy said. "Did I understand your husband correctly? You've been having fun with my husband for over 20 years? Lisa bashfully lowered her eyes to the floor. "Yes," she said quietly. "Well then, I guess you won't mind if I steal your husband away from you," she said. "After all, it's been years since I've been with a real man, and your husband seems to be settling in quite nicely." Judy looked at me. "What do you say? Are you ready for a little revenge?" Lisa dropped the suitcase she was carrying and looked at us. "You wouldn't be, would you?" she asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please tell me you won't do this to me." "I don't know," I said, "best offer I've gotten in a while. Besides, why should cheaters get all the fun?" Judy laughed. "I guess I have nothing to complain about," Lisa said. "No, you don't," Judy replied. "Oh, and don't forget to take out the trash," she added, grabbing Elroy by the collar. She looked at Elroy for a moment before speaking again. "Don't go in the house. I don't care where you sleep, stay in the car or get a motel room. I never want to see you again. I'm going to see a lawyer tomorrow. Got it?" He nodded obediently. "I got it," he said, heading for the door. Lisa looked at me one last time. "I'm sorry, Alan," she said. "For everything. Goodbye." With those words, she turned away and walked out of the house and out of my life. We watched as Lisa pulled into the driveway and turned onto the main road. I felt a tear about to roll down my cheek and wiped my eyes. Judy turned to me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just got something in my eye," I replied. She smiled. "Tell me, how do you walk away from a 30-year marriage?" I asked. "By opening myself up to new possibilities," she said. I nodded. "You really didn't know about any of this, did you?" she asked. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I just found out today. She was doing it while I was on a business trip." "What about you? Did you know what he was doing?" I asked. "I suspected," she said. "I could smell her perfume on him and his clothes, but I never caught him doing it. I resigned myself to it and hoped he'd come to his senses." "So, what are you going to do now?" I asked. "I don't know," she replied with a sigh. "I've always been a stay-at-home wife and mother. That's all I ever wanted to be. My mother raised me old-fashioned, said the best job a woman could have was homemaker. I married right out of high school and never had a paying job. All I wanted was to make my husband happy and raise my children to be the best they could be. But I'll manage." I had no doubt she'd get back on her feet. "Did you really mean what you said earlier?" I asked about love and all that. She laughed. "Do you want to stay the night?" I asked. "Would you be okay with that?" she asked. "I'd love the company," I said. "I guess I wouldn't mind either," she said. That night, we made love before going to bed. "Why did you stay with him then?" I inquired. "Believe it or not, I loved him," she said. "Once, he was a good man. At first, he always took care of me and the children." "You loved your wife too, didn't you?" she asked. "Yes, I did," I said. "Some part of me will probably always love her, but I'll be damned if I'll put up with her cheating." "I feel the same way," she said. "As far as I'm concerned, my marriage is over. I kept my vows, but once he broke them, it was over." "So, now what?" I asked. "You mean us?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I've never been the type to get into a one-night-stand relationship, and I'm too damn old to start dating again." "Is that your way of saying you like me and want to keep dating me?" she asked. "I guess I do," I said. "Well," she began, "I like you too, Alan Roberts. If it's all the same to you, I'd like to see what happens." I'd like that too, I said. She smiled. Okay, she said. The next morning, she said with a smile, "Good morning, lover. Would you like some breakfast?" "I'd love to," I said. "Okay," she said. "I've already made coffee. What do you have planned for the day?" "I have an appointment with my lawyer this morning, and then I'm going to talk to someone about work," I said. "What about you?" "Well, I'm going home after breakfast, and then I'll make my own appointment with the lawyer," she said. "I'll see you downstairs," she added before she left. I went to the bathroom and did my morning chores and showered. I decided to wear my Class C uniform, so I got dressed, made sure everything was in order, and went downstairs. Upon seeing me, Judy's eyes went wide. "Are you in the Army or something?" she asked. "In the Marines," I replied. "At least for about another month or so. I'm on terminal leave pending retirement." She looked at the ribbons and badges on my chest. "What's all this for?" she asked. "Different things," I replied. "This one, for example, says I was in the wrong place at the wrong time more than once," I added, pointing to a Purple Heart ribbon with 3 stars on it. "Oh my God," she said. "You were wounded in combat?" "Seriously," I said. 4 times. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Desert Storm in the 90s, I said, then 3 tours of duty in Iraq, and 3 more in Afghanistan. "How long have you been in the military?" she asked. "Just over 30 years total," I replied. "Some of that was in the reserves, but most of the time I was on active duty." "So, your wife cheated on you with my husband while you were in the war?" she asked. "And he knew what you were doing?" "Yes," I said. She shook her head in bewilderment. She said. "He'll pay dearly." We ate breakfast and then headed outside. She asked me to call her after she got home, and I promised I would. The meeting with the lawyer went well. He listened to my story and went over my evidence, the prenup and the financial information I brought showing that she was making a few thousand more than I was while on active duty. "Well, I think that's pretty much out of the question," he said, "given the financial data and your prenuptial agreement. I believe we can rule out any claim for alimony, especially since she makes about $68,000 a year. She can live quite well on that money in Spokane Valley. Of course, the house and property originally belonged to you, and the prenuptial agreement clearly states that the pension will not be affected. However, you will have to split the bank account. I don't see the judge saying otherwise. We will insist on the 40% as stated in the contract." "When do you want it filed?" "As soon as possible," I said. "Good," he said. "We'll have to work a little harder to get it to Washington, but that's no problem. We do it all the time. I'll handle the preparation and filing of the paperwork. If all goes well, we should be able to award it early next week. All I need from you now is the filing fee and my fee. You can pay the young lady when you leave." He held out a piece of paper to me. "Here's a list of things you must do to protect yourself," he added. "I hope your wife hasn't gotten to the bank yet." I looked over the list. I would definitely have to stop by the bank on my way out of the house. Most of the rest could be done online. "Any questions?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not at the moment," I said. He handed me a card and shook my hand. "Feel free to call if you need anything," he said. "And good luck." I stopped at the exit, paid the filing fee and prepayment, and hit the road. Once in the car, I called John. "Just finished with the lawyer," I told him. "I need to stop by the bank to settle things there, but I wanted to talk to you about that job you were talking about." "I'll be here," Gunny replied. "I look forward to seeing you." After the conversation ended, he sent me a text message with directions to the campground. I went to the bank and found that Lisa hadn't touched the account yet, so I withdrew 60% and used it to open a new account in my name only. I then canceled the joint credit cards, paying off the balance. I also ordered a new ATM card and a new credit card. For myself. After that, I traveled to the campground, which was about 35 miles northeast of my home. Unfortunately, the drive was a little longer, but it was a good day and gave me a chance to reflect on my life. In just one day, I went from a happily married man anticipating retirement and old age with his wife to a man learning that I had been made a fool of and cuckolded for over 20 years. 6 of those years I was in a war zone, literally putting my life on the line. I realized that emotionally I dealt with Lisa's betrayal the same way I dealt with armed fanatics and terrorists wanting to kill me in combat. At least there was Judy. I don't know how I would have handled it all alone. I certainly liked her vigor and candor, and she was damn good in bed. I just hoped I wasn't making a mistake by getting involved with her so soon after I dumped Lisa. Finally, I pulled onto the road leading to Camp Rollins. There was no traffic on the narrow 2-lane road, so I was going pretty fast. I pulled up to a gate with a small guard booth and stopped. An armed man in a camouflage uniform came to my window. "I'm here to see John Sykes," I said. "The name's Roberts, Alan Roberts." I handed him John's card and my driver's license as commanded. "One moment, sir," the guard said. He inspected my truck and went back to the shack. I watched him talk to someone on a field. After a minute or two, he returned to my truck and handed me back my license and business card. "Commander Sykes is expecting you." "Welcome to Camp Rollins, Gunny Roberts," the man said. I started to thank him, but he had already left to open the gate. He waved at me as I drove by, and I waved back. After driving around a few more tight turns, I found myself in the grounds of a typical military camp. Wooden buildings were neatly arranged around a central area where groups of men marched or ran around. Everything was spotlessly clean, and the grounds were neatly manicured. I found the camp headquarters and parked in front of it. I stepped inside and was greeted by an attractive blonde woman in a professional skirt. She looked up and smiled as I entered the office. "You must be Sergeant Roberts," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Welcome to Camp Rollins," she said. "Commander Sykes is expecting you. Would you like a cup of coffee?" "Yes, please." "That sounds great," I said. "Black, if that's okay." "Sure," she said. "Please come in." I knocked on the door, and he invited me inside. I noticed he was wearing a khaki-colored uniform shirt with a set of silver oak leaves denoting the rank he held in the Army. He hung up the phone and stood up to greet me. "Glad you could make it, Gunny," he said. "Please have a seat." I sat down just as the receptionist brought me my coffee. I thanked her and took a sip. It was just what the doctor ordered. "I take it you had no trouble getting here?" "None." "You gave excellent directions," I said. "Good," he said. "Before we get too deep into things, let me tell you a little more about the people who come here. Every man who comes through these gates is a victim. All of them have been cheated on, and many of them have been abused in one form or another. Sometimes that abuse is physical in nature. Almost every man who comes through here has been emotionally abused. Other times, they have been both physically and emotionally abused, and that's in addition to cuckolding and humiliation." "I could relate to that," I said. He continued, "On top of that, these men are what you might call wimps. I know we're not supposed to use terms like that these days, but I believe in having an honest conversation," he said. "Most of the men who come here are weak, both physically and emotionally. Some of them are also scared and feel like they have no one else to turn to for help. Unfortunately, the women they choose to attach themselves to take advantage of that." "Wow," I said, shocked by what he was telling me. "So what do you do?" "The first thing we do is force them to focus and strengthen them physically," John said. "We deny them access to the internet and don't allow them to use any electronics, cell phones, laptops, tablets, whatever, for the 3 months they are here. There is no internet. That means no email, no Facebook, no YouTube, nothing." "I bet that will be well received," I said sarcastically. He laughed. "Sometimes," he said, "before they got here, some of these guys spent all day looking at their cell phones, completely oblivious to the world around them. We take that opportunity away from them and force them to face their problems. So how do they keep in touch with their families? I asked. That's a valid question, John said. We give them a mailbox address that they can send home. Any communication is done through regular mail. We have post offices in Bonners Ferry and Clark Fork, and mail is delivered twice a week. It's a long way to get to the post office, I said. John nodded. We don't want spouses sending people to cause trouble, he said. We have armed guards, helicopters, and an electronic security perimeter around the camp. If anyone tries to get inside, we know about it. Has anyone ever tried to get in? I asked. There have been attempts, John said. Fortunately, we were able to neutralize the threat. There's an unclassified briefing on that in the packet I'm sending home to you. Neutralize, I thought to myself, an interesting term to say the least. I couldn't help but wonder what he meant by it. So tell me more about the training itself, I said. I'll give you a brief overview. Everything is described in the packet I'll send you home. The first month is the most difficult for the students, John explained. In addition to being weaned off modern electronics and the internet, they undergo rigorous physical training, very similar to the first phase of recruit training. Their day starts at 0500 with a curtsy. They double pace everywhere, and the instructors are pretty strict, if you know what I mean. In the second month, we introduce students to their counselors. They go through a very intensive counseling session to sort out their problems. Of course, the physical training continues, and we start teaching them self-defense. In the third month, we reinforce all of that and introduce them to lawyers so they can deal with any legal issues they have. He glanced at his watch before continuing. As a matter of fact, there's a group class going on right now. You might be interested in it, he said. Sure, I said. We walked out of his office and went to another building. Opening the door, he motioned for me to go in first. When I stepped inside, I saw a group of men sitting in a semicircle in front of a female counselor. The instructor sitting by the door froze as John entered, then nodded to me and sat back down. We took our seats at the back of the room and watched in silence. One of the students recalled how his wife made him service her lovers both orally and anally while she laughed and belittled his manhood. He burst into tears, and the students on either side of him patted him on the shoulder, assuring him that everything would be okay. I looked at the instructor, a large man with sergeant chevrons on his collar. He sat stoically, taking in everything that was happening. I could see his jaw clenching with anger as the student cried while the counselor was talking to him. I made the decision to join this organization. If there was anything I could do to help these poor people, I would do it. After listening to some more counseling, John invited me in, and we left. He walked me around the camp, showing me what they had to offer. From there, we went to the instructor hut, the building where the instructors gathered to keep up with the latest news. There were several men there dressed in the same khaki-colored shirts as John. Some wore sergeant chevrons, and a few wore the insignia of a staff sergeant. John had them gathering in the main part of the hut and introduced me to them. We talked for a while, and I learned that about half of them were former Marine Corps drill instructors, and half were former Army NCOs. From the conversation, I realized that these people are a tight-knit group, and they really care about the well-being of their students. So, do you want to join the team? One of them asked me. I looked at John before answering. As a matter of fact, yes. I said. JN smiled before he spoke. I've asked John to be our new senior instructor. John said he's on terminal leave right now, so it'll be a while before he's working here full-time. In the meantime, I'd like him to spend some time here getting to know everyone. The others nodded their heads approvingly. Welcome aboard, Gunny, one of them said, shaking my hand. The others followed suit. Thank you, I said. After that, John and I went back to his office, talking about work and what was being done at the camp. So, JN said, are you in? I nodded my head. Yes, John, I said. He smiled and shook my hand. Welcome aboard, he said. If you don't mind me asking, why did you decide to join us? he inquired. Listening to that man in counseling, I said, I never knew this sort of thing actually happened. I thought they just read about it on the internet. Yeah, JN said, it's a lot more common than people realize. By the way, I suppose I should make you an official proposal, he said, laughing. He handed me a piece of paper, and I nearly fell over when I saw what the company was offering, a salary far in excess of what I was getting in the Corps and a benefits package to die for. Of course, I accepted the offer. Okay, John said, handing me a stack of folders, a little light reading to get you through the next few weeks. I laughed. Feel free to come back anytime you want. You'll definitely want to come to the burning ceremony, he said. What is that? I asked. It's something we do at the end of every class, he said. I think you'll enjoy it. Saying goodbye, I picked up my folders and headed home. The next 3 weeks flew by quickly. Lisa received the divorce papers and immediately signed them without contesting anything. The attorney called me and told me my divorce would be final in 30 days. Judy filed for divorce from Elroy, but her divorce would take longer, at least 90 days, because she filed in her home state of Washington. I never heard from Lisa again, nor was I interested. Her parents arrived about 2 weeks after I filed for divorce and took the few things she wanted out of the house, along with the rest of her belongings. I gave them the cashier's check for her portion of the bank accounts, as well as all of our pictures of her. I didn't want anything in the house to remind me of her. According to Lisa's mother, she was too embarrassed to make eye contact with me. Somehow, I wasn't surprised. However, Judy spent the last 3 weekends at my place, and we had a great time. I took her fishing on Lake Pendo Rail, and she had a lot of fun. Lisa was never a fan of this activity, but Judy took to it with gusto, eagerly cleaning and cooking the coho salmon we caught. I made it a habit to visit the camp a couple of times a week and talk to each of the instructors. I learned that they are all combat veterans and divorced, although a couple of them are starting new relationships. I also attended several group counseling sessions to understand what motivated the students to come here in the first place. I must admit that their stories touched my heart. I also learned what caused the camp to be so tightly guarded. As I was able to find out, one of the students was a victim of an organization called Masmas. He ran away from his wife and came to the camp, but the organization was determined to bring him back. They even attempted an armed invasion of the camp, but that attempt was foiled thanks to the camp guards and a federal agency I had never heard of before. As a result, the company has established new rules. If Masmas is mentioned by a prospective student, that agency must be contacted. From what I read, the agency had been called twice in the last year. Toward the end of the month, John invited me to witness the burning ceremony that marked the end of the 3-month course. I put on my Class C uniform and hit the road. The ceremony was held at night, and I, along with John, stood back and watched. While I watched, the students in the class were attaching pictures of their wives to a straw figure, which was then lifted up and attached to a pole with a rope. At the base of the pole was a pile of firewood. One of the students was called up and handed a lighted torch. "Burn the bough," the teacher commanded. "Sir, yes, sir," replied the student. He set a pile of wood on fire, and the fire quickly engulfed the straw figure. The students began chanting, "Burn, burn, burn," as the figure burned. The students raged, raising their fists in the air, howling and chanting. When the figure fell to the ground, the students danced and chanted, and some urinated on the figure. This went on for a while until the figure turned to ashes. "What is all this for?" I asked John. "This little ceremony gives the men a sense of completion," he explained. "It's a way to purge themselves of whatever has been tormenting them without resorting to violence against their spouses. Tomorrow, they'll graduate from here ready to deal with whatever life may throw at them. Just think, 3 months ago, they came here as weak cuckolds. Tomorrow, they'll leave here as men." I could understand that, for a moment. I imagined it was Lisa who was tied up and burning into ashes. The thought made me smile to myself. "How are things going on the home front?" asked J.N. "Good," I replied. "The divorce will be final in a few days. How are you holding up? He asked. I nodded my head. I'm doing fine, I said, a lot better than I thought. That's good to hear, he told me. I understand your vacation ends in a few days. Yes, I said, 3 days to be exact. Excellent, he said. Then I expect you to be ready to meet our new students. They'll be here in 4 days. By the way, you'll need this, he added, reaching into his pocket. He handed me a small box. Opening it, I found a set of polished metal chevrons. Sergeant Major, I asked. Yes, he replied. This denotes your status as a senior instructor. Congratulations. Thank you, I said. He smiled. No, he said, thank you. I spent the next 4 days with Judy. Elroy offered to buy out her half of the house, and she accepted. Apparently, he was planning to move Lisa in with him, and she was anxious to get out of the place. I suggested she move in with me, and she readily agreed. So, I rented a trailer, moved everything she wanted out of their old house, and moved her in with me. It would be tight for a while, but I knew we could get things under control. Judy watched me dress for my first full day at camp and then fed me a breakfast befitting a king. She handed me a thermos of coffee and kissed me as I walked out the door. Follow them, she said with a smile. I will. I didn't know where a relationship with Judy would lead, but I was willing to give it a try. So far, she had managed to fill the void left by Lisa, and I couldn't remember when I had been so content. I made my way to the campground and headed to the reception area. I examined myself in the mirror, adjusted my hiking pouch over my eyes, and stepped out onto the porch overlooking the group of men on the trail. Oh my God, I screamed, looking around at the small group of men standing in the parking lot. How the hell do they expect me to make men when they don't even send me human beings to begin with? Get this sorry bunch out of my sight and get to processing them before I start swearing. Yes, Sergeant, the man replied and escorted the group to processing. As they left, I turned around and saw J.N. He was grinning from ear to ear. Well done, he said. Welcome to Camp Rollins. Hello. If you find these contents helpful, feel free to share them with your friends and family. Additionally, as usual, since YouTube's algorithm prioritizes videos with many likes, if you enjoy this video, please click the like button to help our podcast reach a wider audience. You may also consider subscribing to the channel to receive notifications whenever I upload new content. YouTube will notify you accordingly. Thank you for your support and have a great day.